Donald Trump's so-called peace deal is finally out, and it is every bit as grotesque and ridiculous as we thought it was going to be. In a fight between a powerful oppressor imposing a brutal military occupation that violates people's most basic human rights, and the oppressed who are living under the boot of that occupation, a fair mediator is supposed to constrain the actions of the oppressor and stand up for the rights of the oppressed. What we have in the Trump administration is the exact opposite. This so-called peace deal is an endorsement of Israel's aggression, allowing it to take over whatever Palestinian lands it wants, punishing the victims for daring to object to having their homeland stolen, and leaving them stranded on tiny and isolated pieces of land under the complete control of the Israeli military. In short, this is not a peace deal. This is formalized apartheid. Here's the basic context. In the late 80s, the Palestinians recognized Israel on 78% of their land and accepted a future state on only 22% of historic Palestine, namely the occupied Palestinian territories. Keep in mind that more than 700,000 Palestinians were ethnically cleansed from Israel, so the magnitude of this compromise should really be appreciated. This kicked off the peace process under US leadership with the understanding that Israel was going to comply with international law and withdraw from the 22% of the land that it occupies to allow for the creation of a Palestinian state. The problem, though, is that Israel did the exact opposite. Throughout the so-called peace process, Israel accelerated its takeover of Palestinian lands, building more and more illegal settlements and escalating its violence, making Palestinian independence impossible. Whenever you hear the lie that Palestinians refuse to come to the negotiating table and that the problem is that there is no Palestinian partner for peace, consider this analogy. Let's say that you tell your neighbor to stop building a fence on your property that's taking over your backyard, and so your neighbor invites you over to negotiate the dispute. When you show up, instead of negotiating in good faith, your neighbor slaps you across the face, takes the money out of your wallet, and keeps pushing the fence deeper into your backyard. The next day, he invites you over to negotiate again and does the exact same thing all over. Would you at that point accept another invitation to negotiate under the same conditions? This is precisely what the Palestinians have been putting up with for more than 20 years of negotiations, starting in 1993. Every time Palestinians showed up to negotiate, the Israeli government would just disregard the talks and keep stealing more Palestinian land, building more illegal settlements, and further brutalizing Palestinians. And now you have Trump endorsing Israel's land theft, and he wants the Palestinians to seriously engage with his sham of a peace deal? President after president criticized Israel for entrenching the occupation and building more and more illegal settlements, but none had the courage to apply real pressure on Israel to stop. Peace was waiting on an American president with the moral courage to push Israel to change course by applying conditions on the billions of dollars we give the Israeli military each year. Instead, we got Donald Trump, who decided to make America a participant in Israel's war against the Palestinian people. Meanwhile, this administration and far-right pro-Israel forces are coming for our freedom of speech to keep us from speaking honestly about all this. Even though political boycotts are protected by the First Amendment of the Constitution, there are now laws in dozens of states that allow the government to punish Americans for boycotting Israel or illegal Israeli settlements, which, by the way, are war crimes under international law. Just think about how absurd that is for a second. Americans can boycott American businesses without consequence, but they cannot boycott Israel or Israeli war crimes. There's also a Trump executive order conflating criticism of Israel with anti-Semitism. So now college students run the risk of being falsely accused of anti-Semitic harassment for nothing more than describing Israel's policies accurately. Enough is enough. It is time for all Americans of conscience to stand together and demand a leadership that reflects our values at home and abroad. We cannot be complacent anymore. It is time to speak up and demand better of our government.